Good afternoon, everyone. It's exciting to be here today with all of you and to talk about the exciting topic of collaboration between law enforcement and prosecutors around the country. It sounds like we're going to have some great panelists today and really looking forward to hearing the dialogue back and forth. So I'm going to sort of set the stage for today and talk about some key issues facing the law enforcement and prosecution communities and some initial thoughts as to areas in which collaboration is vitally important. So on behalf of the National District Attorneys Association, which is the largest and oldest prosecutor organization in the country with over 5,000 members, I'm really excited to join you here today to talk about collaboration across the criminal justice system, in particular, the collaboration between law enforcement and prosecution. Our mission at NDAA is to serve as the voice of America's prosecutors and to ensure that our members are protecting the communities they serve and doing justice for both victims of crime while also holding offenders accountable. As the discussion surrounding our nation's criminal justice system has evolved, the role of the prosecutor and law enforcement has really taken center stage. Calls from community advocates and politicians for increased transparency, particularly in the data space and the decision-making process by law enforcement and prosecutors, have echoed throughout the law enforcement and prosecution communities. Prosecutors are embracing the challenge of evaluating how they can better communicate with law enforcement partners and analyze new and improved criminal justice data and ultimately decide the best course of action the next time another case hits their desk. As we collaborate with the broader law enforcement community, prosecutors must account for the unique and varying challenges across jurisdictions, whether they be urban, rural, and they must account for the need for attention to resources and staffing. All of this is in an effort to improve our criminal justice system. That's what makes today so important. The law enforcement and prosecution communities must come together to address these emerging challenges and find solutions that promote community safety and provide justice for the people they serve. I'm going to take a few minutes to talk about some of the challenges that are facing the law enforcement and prosecution communities. Collaboration among police, sheriffs, criminal investigators, and prosecutors at the federal, state, and local level have become more important as the years have gone on, specifically as the criminal justice system has come under increased scrutiny. Often, those advocating for good-intentioned reforms lack that on-the-ground, frontline experience of the burdens facing prosecutors and law enforcement as caseloads have continued to grow for rank-and-file officers and prosecutors' offices around the country. Also, as updated technology and increased data collection become available for the law enforcement community, these advancements also create new challenges that must be properly resourced. This begs the question, how have the recent changes to the criminal justice system affected the way that prosecutors and law enforcement do their jobs on a daily basis and collaborate? The most high-profile example of these recent changes could be in the body camera space, as increased body cameras are being deployed by police officers and sheriff's deputies throughout the country. Using these cameras, law enforcement has been able to provide the general public with a look into the challenges and dangers facing officers on a day-to-day basis. These new tools have also provided increased transparency to strengthen the confidence that the public has in the criminal justice system. However, as the use of body-worn cameras rises, so do the manpower and resource issues that are necessary to carry out their jobs, particularly as it relates to storing and analyzing footage. Prosecutor offices around the country are tasked with handling hours of footage with little to no increase in staff or funding to account for these new burdens. Law enforcement must maintain this footage and store it properly with cost greatly exceeding the resources they have now, and the agencies are also short-staffed. For prosecutors, they must also balance the need to ensure privacy concerns are addressed when it comes to innocent bystanders captured on body camera footage. For example, a mom concerned that the license plate of her car is captured on camera as she and her children are unloading groceries. A call for service to an individual's home where a potential domestic violence situation is unfolding. These are just a couple of examples where prosecutors must balance the digital evidence before them with the individual right to privacy and also partner with their law enforcement colleagues. Perhaps this is most evident in the sensitive case of officer-involved shootings. Often, there is a rush by the public to be an expert and know the facts in a given case, even during an ongoing investigation. Prosecutors are tasked with sifting through volumes of evidence and maintaining their independence amid outside political and public pressures to attempt to impact the disposition of the case. When handling these divisive cases, our members must balance the dangers facing law enforcement officers, the concerns of the communities they represent, and the erosion of trust among some communities. When multiple agencies are responding to an incident, for example, there are usually multiple cameras across the officers responding. Law enforcement agencies must ensure that they turn over all the body camera footage to the prosecutor's office, and in turn, the prosecutors should be able to provide guidance to these agencies on policies and procedures that may impact the way they do their job in order to comply with their obligations to defense counsel. Body-worn cameras do provide an avenue of transparency, allowing prosecutors and law enforcement a first-hand account of the incident in many situations. Providing prosecutors with the proper funding, resources, and manpower to review this footage is essential to maximizing the use of this tool, which can play a vital role in strengthening the public trust in the criminal justice system. Another area of interest, asset forfeiture. The use of forfeiture funds has come under increased scrutiny within the discussions around resources for prosecutors and our law enforcement partners. Essential to investigating and disrupting networks of criminal activity, both criminal and civil forfeiture play a role in combating crime. Despite the benefits of forfeiture, rare cases involving the misuse of forfeited funds has sparked a policy debate that threatens the use of the important tool in the long run. Once again, the law enforcement and prosecution communities can come together to increase transparency around this tool in the practice and use of forfeiture funds, while highlighting the practice's ability to disrupt drug trafficking networks and money laundering operations. By shining a light on how these funds are used to combat crime, while also holding those who misuse funds accountable, prosecutors and their partners can rewrite the narrative. To that end, prosecutors and law enforcement play a vital role in determining lawful seizures and ensuring that current legal process and best practices are followed. Many state prosecutor associations have in fact issued best practice guidelines to law enforcement in the field on using forfeiture funds and how to make sure that lawful seizures are conducted. Once again, we have an opportunity today to address this head on and talk about the ways in which law enforcement and prosecutors can work together on many issues impacting their communities. Data-driven decision-making, another area that has really taken center stage as we talk about criminal justice system. As that conversation has evolved, prosecutors and law enforcement have been called upon to increase the use of data to inform their decision-making processes and improve outcomes within the system. Prosecutors are embracing data-driven decision-making and taking steps to increase transparency within the communities they serve. However, one barrier to this is the difference in jurisdictions across the country. Each jurisdiction is unique, and prosecutors must analyze the data to develop solutions that best fit the needs in their communities. Employing diversion programs started by prosecutors decades ago and transparency measures are tools to improving the criminal justice system, yet no two prosecutors' offices are the same. One recent example is the launch of a website by the San Francisco District Attorney's Office that provides years of prosecution data in a public-facing way. That same office announced it will use artificial intelligence to combat racial bias in sentencing. In North Carolina, my home state, the Administrative Office of the Courts has modernized and cleaned up state court information through an integrated system, which allows prosecutors to bypass a manual process and essentially group cases together in an effort to dismiss them more quickly. Earlier this year, the National District Attorneys Association took a group of elected prosecutors out to Microsoft headquarters to hear about the ways in which technology and data are interacting with the criminal justice system, and ways in which that information can improve the way that we perform our jobs. I also spoke just a couple of weeks ago at a congressional briefing headed by Congresswoman Adams in North Carolina, focusing on the use of data-driven solutions to improve the criminal justice system. This event focused on the conversation of data and some of the themes that we'll discuss today, including barriers to law enforcement and prosecutor collaboration, but also the ways in which data plays a vital role in all that we do. While these are positive examples of how data and technology are improving the system, prosecutors often run into barriers while pursuing some of these changes. As caseloads grow, prosecutors and law enforcement need improved resources and technology to make processes more efficient and to allow them to collect better data, which in turn increases transparency and the decision-making process. We must strike the right balance between the safety needs of the communities that prosecutors and law enforcement serve, while also ensuring justice is done for both victims of crime while also holding offenders accountable. For example, simply relying on data alone will not present a full picture of the range of factors that go into decision-making by prosecutors and law enforcement. As so many of you probably know from your past and current experiences, there is a human component to decisions made in a prosecutor's office that must be factored in with reliable data to improve the system. Data-driven decision-making requires law enforcement to balance quantitative data with experience and judgment along with prosecutorial discretion to ensure decisions are made in the interest of justice for the community. As we move forward, our research efforts must factor each of these components into the greater analysis of decision-making and its role in the criminal justice system. We once again must communicate and rely on our law enforcement and prosecutor partners to guarantee new data is shared effectively across agencies and that information sharing is a two-way street to ensure that everyone has the relevant data necessary. As data-driven decision-making evolves, it is imperative that we are transparent with each of our law enforcement partners to make sure that the system meets the needs of the public and each of the communities you serve. So where do we go from here? How can we collaborate to improve the criminal justice system as a whole? The safety of our local communities relies on a strong relationship between prosecutors and their law enforcement partners, along with other criminal justice stakeholders, such as victims, rights groups, and others that are working tirelessly to protect their communities. There is no better example of this than federal, state, and local partnerships in response to mass casualty events and other critical incidents that we have seen transpire in the news. This is just one of many instances in which a coordinated and efficient response is necessary to support communities. When responding to crises, federal, state, and local law enforcement and prosecutor partners must rely on an existing framework of cooperation and communication. Without strong collaboration on the front end, law enforcement and prosecutors risk maximizing their ability to effectively respond to crime. Partnerships between state and federal law enforcement must be fostered through strategic initiatives and grant opportunities aimed at improving cooperation. One such example is the Project Safe Neighborhoods program that provides state and local law enforcement with the needed resources to strengthen their partnership with federal agencies and establish innovative programs to combat violent crime, among others. Following the U.S. Department of Justice decision to reestablish and invigorate the PSN program in 2017, state and local prosecutors have created new partnerships alongside their federal partners to improve data collection, develop community-based training, and support locally based crime prevention and reentry efforts. With new grants and funding offered through PSN, prosecutors and law enforcement are able to partner with their local U.S. attorneys' offices to combat violent crime and, in particular, develop strategies and establish community programs to reduce recidivism rates in the long run. With state and local prosecutors handling well over 90% of criminal cases, our members serve as the drivers of the PSN program, along with law enforcement partners, ensuring that collaboration and coordination leads to good and just outcomes. We are grateful to partner with our host here today, CNA, as well as the Major City Chiefs Association, on a PSN grant to further develop the Department of Justice's goal of reducing violent crime and enhancing collaboration across the justice system. This also includes creating prevention strategies and crime-solving strategies that enhance all of our public safety. The revival of this community-based effort under PSN is yet another example of how well-resourced collaboration and communication on the front end can successfully benefit our country's criminal justice system at both the state and local level. In our communities, it is often lost in the conversations surrounding the criminal justice system and the effective collaboration where victims play a role. With partnerships between law enforcement and prosecutors, we are frequently called upon to serve as victim advocates and serve as the only voice for victims in the courtroom and in the community, along with other stakeholders. As NDAA has engaged on many different reform initiatives with both law enforcement and community advocates, we've become concerned that the victim's voice has been overshadowed in the broader narrative and that victims have become invisible in the conversation. The imperative is on the law enforcement and prosecution communities to elevate those whose lives have been changed by crime and educate the broader community about the need to support victims in their pursuit of justice. While prosecutors continue to embrace reforms to ensure a fair and more equitable criminal justice system, we must strike the right balance between the safety needs of the communities that all of you serve and that prosecutors represent, while also ensuring justice is done for victims of crime. NDAA is excited to be here today and really appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this conversation. With this forum today, we're able to expand and continue the dialogue on how we can best serve our communities that we are tasked with protecting. Prosecutors and law enforcement throughout the country to continue to engage in innovative efforts to address the challenges within the criminal justice system, including diversion programs and alternatives to incarceration, to make sure we aren't criminalizing mental health and substance use disorders, for example. Also to make sure we identify a victim of human trafficking and we get her the services she may need, or to make sure we don't criminalize poverty. We look forward to working with our partners here today to highlight these efforts and explore the ways in which prosecutors and law enforcement are successfully providing justice to the communities they serve and identifying new ways in which prosecutors and law enforcement can lead the improvements in the criminal justice system. I'd like to thank Tim and Chip and others here at CNA for the invitation to join you today on this critical discussion on collaboration across the criminal justice system, particularly as the law enforcement and prosecution communities intersect. We look forward to learning from each of our law enforcement partners here today and the panels ahead on the challenges facing law enforcement and prosecutor collaboration, as well as innovative solutions that can work to create new innovative programming in our communities. We can continue to cultivate and enhance these long-standing relationships that are ultimately critical to ensuring public safety, and we look forward to the discussion today. And once again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here.